I know we've been emailing a lot back and forth, so it's nice to put a email with a face.
Exactly. I agree. It seems like a lot of things are happening over email these days, so it's
Right?
easy to get lost in the virtual reality.
For sure.
Awesome.
This is great.
Yes, thank you again for joining us. We will get started. I guess in 1 minute, we'll give some people a few more seconds to join. And then
Sure.
we have about one announcement to make, and
Okay.
then I will hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Awesome. Wow,
Awesome.
your pre-general society has so many people. This is my undergrad had nothing like this. We had like 8 to 10 people, and half of them were probably pre-med, just helping me out. So this it's awesome.
I know we are truly privileged to have such a strong base here, and I think it's really encouraged a lot of people to kind of explore dentistry more because it's kind of an unheard and neglected, career path, as I'm sure you know
Yeah,
yourself. So,
for sure.
yes, we're very lucky.
This is so cool. What's up, everyone? Sarah, Sasha. I'm just gonna say hi to people with their cameras on. Allison, what's
Hi, thanks for coming. We're super excited.
Hey, I'm excited as well. This is cool. Awesome. Joanna. 'Cause I know it's kind of weird 2020 being virtual, but I'll try to, talk with as many of you as I can, try to connect through Zoom.
All right, so it's 6:30. We can get started. We'll begin with just one quick announcement from our service chair, Sarah. So go ahead and take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. I just wanted to pop in and say that our first service event will be taking place on November 14th. It's a Saturday from 10 to 1 at NNEMAP Food Pantry. It's a new service site this year, so I'm excited to check it out with everyone. And it's in a couple of weeks, so I haven't made the sign up sheet yet, but I'll be sending that out soon. And there's a 10-person limit, so it will be first come, first serve. So just be on the lookout for that. I'll send it in the group meet, and I'll also update the Google Doc with it. But in the meantime, I know that Seed is serving this Saturday at My Family Pantry. A few of us went like a couple weeks ago, and it was really fun meeting new people and serving. So I highly encourage everyone to join. But yeah, just be on the lookout for the sign-up sheet. Thanks, Lily.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. Okay, so without further ado, I am super excited to introduce our incredible guest speaker, Dr. Jordan Brown. Just a brief background, I'm sure you've seen it on social media, but in case you missed it, and I'm sure he'll go more into the details, but he graduated from Morehouse College with a degree in biology, and recently graduated from the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, and was the only student selected in his graduating class for the National Health Service Corps Scholarship, which I'm sure he will go into. And as a student, he has created an educational ebook series called the Plaque Masters Academy, which we have linked in our Instagram bio at the moment. So if you're interested, please go check that out, and I can send you more details if you would like. So with that said, I will hand it over to Dr. Brown.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lily, for that warm and humbling introduction. And I want to keep this as, relaxed as possible. So I highly encourage interruptions. If you have literally a question at any point, you can shout it out. You don't have to use the Zoom raise your hand button, but if you feel more comfortable with it, you absolutely can. I have a few slides that I do want to share with you all. And it just kind of goes on my background, kind of where I came from. And then I want to give you all at least, excuse me, at least some actionable advice you can take from my presentation today and just use that in your future, both in your pre-dental studies, dental school, and beyond. So without further ado, I'm just going to share a PowerPoint I made with you all. Let's see, can you all see this? Yeah, okay, awesome. So dental school, dental school and beyond, right? That's what we're going to talk about. So Lily gave me an awesome introduction, but just as another quick snapshot, I'm a general dentist. I graduated in May 2020 from the University of Michigan. I'm a speaker, an author. I started the whole Plaque Masters Academy series when I was a dental student because I realized that there were so many things that dental students didn't have access to in terms of educational resources, and I started to just share things that I was making there. I'm currently an AEGD resident, which that is just a residency program after dental school that you can gain more experience in things like dental implants and more complex dentistry. And then I'll get more into this detail as well, but I'm a National Health Service Corps scholar. Okay, so how did I get here? And I really enjoy starting my presentation off with a story of me as a pre-dental student, similar to where you all are in your career. So when I was trying to figure out which career I wanted to go into, like most people, I was contemplating, a few different things. In order to help kind of aid in my transition from high school to college, I enrolled in this pre-freshman summer program that was, meant to prepare us for the harder science classes in college. So it was a 6-week program, and we took things like biology, chemistry, pre-calculus, things like that. And so for me, I really didn't come from a super strong science background. I took one biology class in high school, and that was about it. So halfway through the program, I'm struggling in biology. I'm failing exams, and I'm like, I don't know if this biology thing is going to work out. And I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to become a dentist if I'm struggling in biology 101. And so at this point, I was thinking about changing my major to something probably easier. I was failing quizzes, not passing them, and I was embarrassingly far behind, and I was embarrassed of asking for help. And then it was halfway through the program when we had a dentist come in and speak to us, just like how I'm speaking to you all through kind of your pre-dental club. A dentist came and spoke with us, and this dentist is, he's a rock star. His name is Dr. Dunson, but he is a cosmetic dentist in Atlanta. He has this fancy practice, and he's like a rock star, basically. And he was speaking to our class, and he said, everyone here, you're all smart enough to become a dentist or a physician or a radiologist, whatever you want to be. You're all smart enough to do that. It's not about intelligence at all. It's about perseverance and determination and working through obstacles. And as a pre-dental student who had at least 8 years of coursework ahead of him, it felt like he was talking to me. It was probably a room full of 30 people, but it felt like he was literally talking directly to me. And so from there, I modified my study habits. I asked for help. I sat in the front row of my classes. And, long story short, that was a real pivotal moment that just changed around everything for me. And I share the story to let you all know that you all are very early in your careers right now. You may have taken the DAT, you may have not, you may or may haven't gone through organic chemistry or some of those hard classes, but the gist of the story is the journey is hard. It's really hard. And it's supposed to be hard because dentistry is one of the greatest professions, in the world right now. There's a reason why year after year, it's ranked as one of the top professions in the US. But with that being said, just because the journey is hard doesn't mean it's impossible and doesn't mean that you can't do it. The only thing that separates you all from me is just time. That's the only difference. So I just wanted to share that story just to know that you all already have the inherent capabilities to be successful, and it's just about putting in the time and effort and energy to overcome those obstacles. Okay, so kind of going off the whole social media thing, I blog on Instagram and everything. And I really started that as a pre-dental student just because when I first started undergrad and trying to learn about the DAT and dental admissions, and I had trouble finding a mentor. So basically I started just sharing my experiences to assist others with, similar aspirations, and it's just grown from there. I think now I don't know, 15,000 people in my Instagram community where we all talk and engage with each other and everything like that. So that was just a little background on me, and I want to go a little bit into just setting up your dental applications to ensure your success. So Lily, could you give me a breakdown of where are most of the people in your club at now? Are they first year, second year, third, fourth?
So I would say we definitely have students from all over the range, but I would say most of the students who are logged on right now are probably first or second years. Some people have just applied, but I would say mostly getting started in their journey.
Thank you. That
No.
that helps me out. So, most people will apply to dental school either their third or fourth year, around there. But a lot of the advice I'm going to give you all, you can apply it now, so that way when you do apply to school, it'll just be that much easier for you. So these are 4 of the absolute most imperative application strategies you can implement, okay? The number one most thing that can increase your likelihood of being accepted to dental school is applying early. And I know, you've probably heard that 100,000 times already, but it makes a huge difference in your application, and here's why. From an admissions committee perspective, right? These are the people that are reviewing all the applications that come into dental school, right? So if you apply early, you're one of the first applications that they see on their table and on their booklet, right? So if they have, let's say, 120 seats in their incoming class to give away, they're a little bit more, I would say, lenient with who can get an acceptance into their program, right? Versus, let's say you applied late in September, October, and let's say their class is already 99% full, and they can only give away one more seat in their incoming class. Well, if they're giving only away one more seat in their class, they're going to be a little bit more strict on who gets that last acceptance, right? That's only natural that it's like supply and demand, right? So applying early by far is the best thing you can do for your application. Highly recommend you aim to submit it in the first month the application opens, which is usually around June or so. Leadership positions, those look really great on your application. You don't have to be president of your pre-dental society, although that looks great. You can have any type of leadership role in your society. You can be community service chair, social media coordinator, and if the position doesn't exist, then just make one up, right? When I was in dental school, we had a dental club with people in it, and I'm into fitness and working out, so I said, why don't we have like a health and wellness chair? And they're like, it's a pretty good idea, Jordan. Why don't you just go ahead and do that? So I was like, cool, can I do this, and can I just do it? And they're like, yeah, sure. So and I just put that on my application for residency, that I made up a position, or I founded the position, and in that role I made objectives for myself, like we implemented fitness regimens for our members, created meal plans for them, all those cool things. So if you're a club right now, if you see there's a need for something, just ask Lily, say, hey, can I start a social media chair or community activism, something that your club doesn't necessarily have right now. And those look good on your application, because schools like well-rounded applicants. Michigan, they have a great reputation, both in academia and research, but they really like well-rounded people. I think that for my personal application, I focused heavily on not only making sure my grades and my DAT were good, but also that I was active in my pre-dental society, and I was a tutor and all these other things, okay? And just as, a frame of reference, you all can ask me any questions you want. Don't feel like anything's off limits. For example, DAT, I got a 20, GPA, I had a 3.8. So GPA was a little bit higher, DAT was probably around average. for accepted students. For your personal statement, this is highly, highly valued in your application. You don't want to be too, I guess, boring and bland. I know admissions committees, they're reading a lot of these applications, and yeah, they're going to be a little repetitive to a certain point, but you want to try to stick out. And the way you can do that is by starting off your personal statement. You can start off with a personal story of what got you just interested in dentistry. You can just say, when I was either a patient or when I was shadowing, I saw XYZ. Either I had a transformative experience with the dentist, or I saw a patient's transformative experience with the dentist, and that inspired me to want to do the same thing for other people. Anything like that, that just reinforces your desire to pursue dentistry. And then you can finish off your essays with, you can finish off your essays with any type of personal characteristics that you have that make you a great dentist. For example, you're relatable, empathetic, anything like that. Letters of recommendation. This is one of the most important things in your application too, and this is something you all can start working on right now. One of the things that holds up students' applications is, let's say they will apply for dental school early. They'll submit their application in the first week of June, right? Awesome, cool. You did everything you were supposed to. But usually for dental school, they require 4 or 5 letters of recommendation. And if your professor or dentist or whoever hasn't submitted their letter for you yet, then it's going to hold up the rest of your application and schools aren't going to review it. I had a buddy who was applying to medical school. He submitted his application and the professor didn't submit his letter until like 2 months later, right? And that just basically, sabotaged almost his whole application. So when you are getting letters of recommendation, this is what I recommend. Identify, who you want a letter from. And I know with COVID and everything, you can't ask in person, although in person would be preferred. But you can just say, would you be able to provide me a strong letter of recommendation for dental school? Emphasis on strong, because you don't want them to just use some cookie cutter letter and submit it on your behalf. One thing you can also do is when you request a letter from a professor, you can add in there, for your consideration, right? For your consideration, I've also attached my personal statement, my resume, my CV to this email, and I've already drafted a letter of recommendation for you to submit on my behalf. Just please feel free to edit or change anything to make it feel more personal or from your perspective. And it's important that you do that, because if you just say, hey, I drafted this letter, submit this, it looks a little fraudulent. But if you say, I've drafted this letter of recommendation just to help you out, and please feel free to add or edit anything in the letter. One, they're going to love you, because professors hate writing letters of recommendation. They just don't enjoy it, right? It's a part of their job that they kind of don't really enjoy. So if you just offer them that drafted letter, they're going to love you, and they're going to submit it early and on time, because they don't have to do as much work. And it's actually pretty easy to find example templates to write letters of recommendation. But of course, you want to change it and add in any personal characteristics of what you and your professor had. For example, you were in their office hours and asked them questions or anything like that. So selecting schools, this is a big one, because applying to dental school, it's actually pretty expensive. I think I spent at least $1,000 between my primary application, and then each school has secondary applications that you have to submit, and then you have to pay for either the secondary application or flights and hotels and all this other crazy things, because by the time you all probably apply to dental school, you'll probably be doing in-person interviews again. So you don't want to just select 18 schools that you either can't get into or won't get into because they may not accept in-state or out-of-state students, right? So highly recommend that you all check out this guide by the ADEA, which is, just the people over everything dental education wise. They have this book where it's just called the Guide to Dental Schools. They have like a profile breakdown of every single dental school, average GPA, average DAT, how many in-state versus out-of-state students they have. It's highly detailed. And what I did when I was applying for schools is I looked at all the schools I was interested in, and then I looked at the breakdown of their incoming class, right? So did my GPA fit within their range? Was my GPA higher or lower? And I looked at just how much the school cost. They had tuition in there. And I used that to base my decision on which schools to apply to. And based on that, I applied to 2 safety schools I was pretty sure I can get an interview at, 2 reach schools, so 2 schools where maybe my stats weren't exactly what they had, but they were almost there. And then the rest of my schools in the middle. I applied to 8 schools, but I know some people that applied to as many as 15, 16. So it kind of just depends on how strong you feel your application is. Okay, so paying for school, right? I know this is something that is pretty far from your minds. I know you have to worry about your DAT, your classes, and the last thing you're probably worrying about is how you're going to pay for dental school. But this is, still a fairly important topic that I want to expose you all to early. Okay, so debt, right? School costs money, and you have to find some way to pay for it. And so I want to kind of pose the question to you all: is the cost of entry, is it worth it? What do you think, Sarah? Is the cost worth it?
I think in the end it would be worth it.
You think so? Okay. What about you, Sasha?
I think it would be worth it for sure if it's what you actually want to do and what you want to spend your life doing. Then yeah, I think it's worth it.
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna make this bigger. I want to see who else has their camera on. Olivia, is it worth it? Let's see. I think you're muted.
Definitely, as long as it's what you want to be doing with your life, what makes you happy.
Okay. Taylor, what if you have to pay $1 million? Is it worth it?
If that's what you want to be doing and that's what's going to make you happy.
This is funny. So I asked this question because I'm in a lot of Facebook groups with older dentists, and a lot of older dentists now, if you ask them this question, a lot of older dentists now, if you ask them that question, a lot of them will actually say no, right? And the reason they think it's no is because they paid, I don't know, a quarter for tuition and a bale of hay. They paid nothing for tuition. So they think that. In my humble opinion, I do think that the investment in your education is worth it, because the earning potential of dentists, it's incredibly high. If you Google how much does a dentist make on Google, you'll probably see 150,000 or something like that. It's way more than that. Just so you're all aware. I know a lot of dentists that earn well above that. So the cost of entry, in my humble opinion, I do believe it's worth it, because the earning potential just is so high in the future. So ways to pay for school, right? We'll go over this, just a quick overview. Major ways: loans. That's how most people pay for it. They have merit-based scholarships. All that means is when you apply to school, the school will just pick you based on your application, whether or not they want to give you some money to go there, right? The most I've seen is probably around $20,000 per year, and that's what I was offered to go to UCLA. But every school is a little bit different. The militia, the military, they have the Army, Navy, and Air Force scholarships. Some of those will offer like a signing bonus, which is usually around like $20,000 when you sign your contract, and they'll pay for school and they'll give you a living stipend. I think that enrolling or going into the military is probably one of the best ways you can pay for school, especially if you're attending like a private school that can cost, over $600,000. I have nothing, poor to say about the military. Only thing is that you have to be flexible with where you're willing to move to, because that's a part of your contract. You go to where you're needed, and you don't really have a say so in where you go. They also give you a living stipend per month, and they have really good residency programs in the military. What I did is the National Health Service Corps. And so first thing that people think of when they hear kind of National Health Service Corps, it sounds kind of like the military because it's Health Service Corps, but it's so far away from that, and that's why a lot of students overlook the program. So I'm not an official spokesperson for the scholarship by any means. So I just kind of throw this little disclaimer out there that, to the best of my knowledge, the information I'm about to tell you all is up to date and current. But if you want the most current information, just go on their website and kind of read about it. So yeah, and these slides were made by the National Health Service Corps. I just went on Google and found them. But I'm in the program and I received their scholarship, so that's why I'm going to tell you all a little bit about it. So essentially, the mission of the National Health Service Corps, or the NHSC, is to just build healthy communities by supporting healthcare providers dedicated to working in areas of the U.S. with limited access to care, right? And they have a lot of different programs under their umbrella. For purposes of our talk today, we're just going to focus on the scholarship program. Okay, so this is the scholarship program. Basically, it's similar to the military in that they pay for all your tuition, equipment, books. They give you a living stipend to pay rent and buy groceries on. They do all that. And in exchange, what you do is you practice dentistry in an underserved community after you finish dental school, basically, right? And from that, I get a lot of mixed reactions because people are like, underserved community, I don't want to live in the middle of rural Utah for like 3 or 4 years, and I don't want to do that either. So when I first heard about the program, I started doing a little bit more, research into it. And their definition of underserved community is actually surprisingly liberal. And you're actually able to choose where you want to practice, unlike the military where you're kind of told where you need to go. And so they have kind of like this online map where you can look at kind of available jobs for the scholarship program. And they have qualifying clinics in places like Tampa, Florida, Los Angeles, Atlanta. So these aren't places that are really in the middle of nowhere. But I think a lot of people, especially students that were in my class, they didn't know about the program, or if they knew about it, they just thought, I'm not really trying to move to middle of the Midwest somewhere. But you choose where you go, and their definition is pretty liberal on where you can practice. And so this is just a random clinic that I saw that qualified everything for the program for me. And it looks like a nice clinic. I mean, from the outside, it's not in a rural hut somewhere. But it's just a nice place to practice. And they have different types of clinics that can satisfy the criteria of your scholarship commitment. So things like federally qualified health centers, those are basically just federally funded facilities that receive government money to see patients who may not have a high income to be able to afford a private practice dentist. But you also have private practices that satisfy for the program. And so, yeah, they have different, you can be a dental student, medical student, NP student, a lot of wide range of eligibility. But for our purposes, we're really just focused on dental students. So here's the big thing about the program, okay? If you decide to enroll in the program, you have to be committed to general dentistry, right? So for me, when I was a pre-dental student, I didn't know if I wanted to be just a general dentist. I didn't know if I wanted to specialize in ortho, like do braces, or become an oral surgeon. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to commit myself to the program before I really knew what I was doing. So what I decided to do was during my first year of dental school, I rotated through all the specialty clinics that were at Michigan. I went through the root canal people, I went through the braces people, oral surgery, I went through everything. And after I saw everything, I decided that, hey, I like doing a little bit of everything. And that's when I applied for the program. So you're not allowed to specialize in anything but basically pediatric dentistry or do a general dentistry residency before your commitment. But if you wanted to specialize afterwards, you could always do it after. For me, at least, I really enjoyed general dentistry. And then also, as a general dentist, your license enables you to do pretty much whatever you want in dentistry. If I want to do braces or Invisalign or any type of oral surgery, I am legally allowed to do it with my license. Ethically is another question, right? If I don't have the additional training to do, maybe some really weird third molars, then I should refer that to an oral surgeon. But I like the fact that with general dentistry, you can do any dentistry you feel comfortable with, and you can always take additional training as a general dentist to add a little bit more to your kind of procedure mix. And this is just how to apply. You just go on the website and there's a whole kind of guidebook on the rules and everything and how to apply for it. But that's in a gist. That's just what it is. And the reason I add this to the presentation is because a lot of my classmates didn't know about the program, or even when I was a fourth year student after I've had the scholarship for 3 years, they would ask me, so do you know where you were assigned yet? And I was like, I pick where I go, but I'm probably moving to Florida. Okay, any questions for me before we kind of go over how to succeed in dental school?
I have a question. Is this something you would apply for while you're submitting your dental school applications, like that same time, like a year before you graduate?
That is a great question, Katie. So with this scholarship, you have to be accepted to dental school before you apply for it. So let's say you were accepted to dental school, great. Now you can apply for the scholarship, or you can start dental school, see if you want to specialize, and then apply for it. And when you apply, you can request how many years you want funding for. So if you apply before dental school, you say, hey, I want to do this and I want 4 years of funding, then that's what your application says. If you apply after your first year, you say, hey, I just want 3 years of funding. Or if you apply after your second year, you say, I want 2 years of funding.
Oh, okay. Right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, how to succeed in dental school. So by far the best advice I can ever give for when it comes to dental school is teamwork makes the dream work. When I was in undergrad, I was kind of like, I'm just going to put my tunnel vision on and do my own thing, and I'll take my own notes and I'll study them, and I'll go to tutoring, but this is kind of like a solo mission. And in undergrad, that worked really well for me. But when it comes to dental school, it's just impossible. It is absolutely impossible because there's too many classes for you to just handle on your own. When you have, instead of, anywhere from 16 to 18 credit hours, when you have 26 and they're all science classes and they're all hard, it's really difficult to digest all of that. And so when I started dental school, I was trying to do my same study tactics that I did in undergrad, but it was quickly burning me out. And so very quickly, I realized that it's way easier to divide and conquer notes for classes. So best advice I can ever give you when you get to dental school, make as many friends as you can. Make as many friends and have a plan for dividing up the notes for your classes. So that way you don't have to take notes for all of them. You can do one class, buddy does another one. You can split half this lecture. I'll do the first half, you do the second half. And then as a segue to that, study guides and resources at whatever dental school you go to, they can be passed down from upperclassmen. You'll find old tests, you'll find resources that upperclassmen have where you won't have to do as much studying for them. So when you get to school, make friends, network, don't try to be a hermit. Most dental schools have dental fraternities. I know it says fraternity, but both men and women are allowed in them. They're just called fraternities. You don't have to join all of them, but usually there's at least 2 or 3 at each school. Yeah, ask upperclassmen for help. Just be willing to just walk up to someone and say, hey, my name's Sasha. I just have a question about, introduction to dental anatomy. And dental students are so friendly and nice, they'll be more than happy to help you out. And then also patient pools are often passed down from upper class students. And what that basically means is, let's say I'm a 4th year dental student and I'm about to graduate and I'm not going to be able to finish some of my patient's treatment. So let's say patient needs 2 crowns. Well, if I'm not going to have enough time to do it as a graduating dental student, someone else will have to finish it, right? And that'll be the next dental student. Well, at least in Michigan, we could choose who we gave that patient to. So let's say I was really good friends with Katie or Olivia. I'd say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and can you assign patient A to Katie? And that way Katie's going to start her clinic off with a great patient. Because when you get to dental school, you are evaluated on what dental treatments you do and are graded on. And things like crowns in dental school can be difficult to come by because of patient finances and availability. So by just making friends with upper class students, it helps out with your education. And then explore specialties early. If you know right now that you want to be an orthodontist and that's what you're going to do, then day one, when you get to dental school, just go walk over to the ortho clinic and say, hey, my name's Sarah, I'm interested in ortho. And they're like, oh, okay, well, that's awesome. And let's just stay connected, because networking and connections, it truly does go far. And I know how old the saying is, but sometimes it is who you know and not always what you know. And so kind of also when you're choosing a dental school, talk with current dental students about their education there. And the easiest way to do this is go on Instagram, go to search, type places, type the dental school, and just find students and DM them. Like I just typed in University of Michigan School of Dentistry and pictures of me pop up. I'm usually fairly active on Instagram. You can ask, dental students are so friendly. And even if they don't respond to you, just DM someone else. Like it's not the end of the world. But yeah, that's really good advice on just asking about their clinical education. Do they feel happy with their school? Not everyone feels happy about their schools. Some schools, they make you buy all your dental instruments, and like Michigan, we rented ours, but some schools make you buy everything, and they're and when you practice in dental school, you'll practice on like fake teeth. Some schools will have like a teeth vending machine where you have to go buy an extra tooth to practice on. And if you're already paying, $100,000 in tuition, why do you have to spend $2 buying an extra plastic tooth? Like that just seems insane to me. At Michigan, we just went and asked for another one, and they just gave it to us. But some schools, you have to, put $2 in a vending machine and buy a new one or whatever. So yeah. All right, so that's pretty much the end of my presentation. I wanted to provide enough time at the end for you all to ask any and all questions that you want to. I'm transparent, so you can ask me literally anything, the good, the bad, struggles, why Michigan, why not Michigan, why not Ohio State. You can ask me literally anything. Any questions?
I have a question. My name's Jenna. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Jenna.
So when did you take your DAT and how did you study? Like I'm using DAT boot camp. Was that around when you took your DAT? I'm not calling you old, but I know that all the technology has changed.
That's a really good question, Jenna. Thank you for asking it. I took my DAT June 29th. I still remember the day. And I did my DAT studying a little I'll say haphazardly. My school actually provided a free DAT prep course through Kaplan. I wasn't a big fan of it. They taught us more or less strategies to take the exam, but they didn't tell us or teach us the content of the exam. For example, when you are looking at a multiple choice exam, if you see any answer that says always or never, usually that's a red flag that that answer is probably wrong, because in science, it's very few things that are always and never. So the Kaplan course kind of taught us, strategies like that, but it wasn't overwhelmingly good. But my DAT strategy was I took heavy hitter science classes the semester before I took the DAT. So I took the DAT the end of my third year of undergrad. So that semester, well, I took my DAT the summer of my third year of undergrad. So I took classes like organic chemistry 2 and biochemistry the semester before. That way, that material would be fresh for the exam. But so I went through the Kaplan course, took my normal classes, and then DAT bootcamp was around, but I was poor in undergrad, so I couldn't afford it. But a lot of people that take DAT bootcamp, they have nothing but positive things to say about it. So I think DAT bootcamp is a really good strategy for preparing for the DAT. I did the Kaplan course, those two classes, my Orgo and Biochem, and then I also used DAT Destroyer. I don't know, have you all heard of that? Yeah, so I used DAT
Yeah.
Destroyer. The questions in there were insanely difficult, and they make you contemplate if you even know what you're thinking. But it does prepare you for the exam, especially the organic chemistry part and the general chemistry part. So I think if you all can invest in DAT Bootcamp, it's awesome. And if you want to supplement on top of that with DAT Bootcamp, with DAT Destroyer, you can. And I used something called Cliff's AP Bio Notes. It's like a book this thick or so, and I think it's meant for the AP exam for high school students taking the AP Bio exam, but it was pretty good for biology on the DAT too. But I think with DAT Bootcamp, you can't really go wrong with that. And it has everything in one place, and it monitors your progress. So I think that's a pretty good strategy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. I'm just a little nervous because I'm taking my DAT on New Year's Eve. So when I'm finished with the test, I'm gonna go home and like vegetate and not do anything.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna feel a lot better when the exam is over, and good or bad, just enjoy New Year's Eve and have fun with your family. But I'm sure you'll do good.
I have a question about also your DAT. So you mentioned you had a pretty average score compared, like I think you had a pretty decent GPA. 3.8 is like very competitive, but a 20 I guess is considered more average.
Yeah.
Were you worried that, did you have to apply like more broadly? Were you worried about your DAT, or do you feel like schools still use like a pretty holistic view? I'm sure you were like very involved in other things.
Sure. That's a really good question, Katie. I thank you for asking it. Absolutely not. I was ecstatic with a 20 DAT because for me, at least, my application, the way I built and constructed it, it was to have a good GPA, stellar extracurricular activities, and then the DAT, I knew all I needed was an average score to get into my schools. When you look at the statistics of who takes the DAT, usually a 17 is the 50th percentile. So everyone that takes the DAT, average score is a 17. If you look at the average number for accepted students though, that's usually a 20 or 21. So for me, I knew that my GPA was above average, my extracurriculars were above average, and my DAT was just at the cusp of average for an accepted student. And so with that, I wasn't worried. Now, with that being said, if you're looking at your own application and your GPA may not be a 3.8, maybe it's, 3.4, 3.3, then you may want to compensate a little bit with a little bit of a higher DAT. You can aim for like a 21 or 22. But it's all about thinking about your application from a holistic view. So for me, I had a 20 on my DAT, but I still got interviews at Harvard, Penn, UCLA, Maryland, Michigan, all those schools, because they saw the entire application. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I have a follow-up question.
Sure,
That's
yeah.
okay.
Sure.
So when you're applying for the DAT, I think probably, I mean, not the DAT, just the schools, I think, I'm assuming your average GPA to be competitive is probably a 3.5, around that. I guess I just had a question on the application process. Do you have to calculate your own GPA beforehand, or like your science GPA? I know they look at that separately. Is that something the schools will do, or do you have to like figure that out on your own? Just because I know that I've taken like some courses at other schools. I don't like know what my overall GPA is at Ohio State. So I was wondering how that worked.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when I applied for dental school, I had to input all my grades from my school. I went to one school. You'd put them all in for your schools. Then you submit your transcripts, and they will do what they call GPA verification. They'll look at what you inputted, and they'll look at all your transcripts, and then they will calculate, I think it's 6 different GPAs for you. It's crazy. They'll do oh, sorry, what'd you say?
No, I was saying, okay, yeah, I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so they'll calculate 6 different GPAs for you, or at least that's what they did when I applied. They'll calculate your cumulative GPA, and they'll calculate that 2 different ways, considering A pluses and A minuses and B pluses and B minuses, and they'll do that with and without those pluses. So that's a little confusing, but for your transcript, if you got a B plus in a class, they will count that as a B, and if you got an A minus in a class, they'll count that as an A. And so they'll calculate your cumulative GPA considering pluses and minuses and not considering pluses and minuses, okay? They'll do that with your cumulative GPA, your science GPA, and your non-science GPA. So you'll probably have 6 GPAs, but they'll calculate that for you.
And that's something you get, like, they'll email that to you, or it's like you don't find out the same day, probably?
No, I think GPA verification, when I applied, it took like 4 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you apply for dental school, if the GPA verification process is the same as it was then, which it probably is, it's better for you just to submit your application. And if you still haven't taken the DAT, or you take it in 3 weeks, just submit your application and then still take your DAT. And then after you take your DAT, the score will just be uploaded to your application. So that way you don't have to wait an extra 4 weeks for your GPA to process.
Yeah. Okay.
Did that make sense?
Thank you so much. Yes, it did.
Okay, you're welcome.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
If you could go back in time and give your pre-dental self or your dental student self any advice, what would it be? I know it's hard.
Yeah, I think that one of the things I most regret, I think, actually in dental school, is that I didn't network and make enough friends when I was there. I was someone who had extreme tunnel vision, that when I get focused, I get focused. And with that being said, I did really well in dental school. I got into my top choice residency. But looking back on it, I'll look at some of my colleagues who also did great things, and they had a lot more fun in the process. They were at Halloween parties, and they have like dental school friends that are in like their weddings and things like that. And honestly, being transparent, I wish I would have focused a little less on school and actually with building those long-lasting relationships with my colleagues. Don't get me wrong, I still had a lot of friends in dental school, and I had some fun, but not nearly to the amount that some of my other friends had. So I'll still have fun while you're in dental school.
Why did you choose U of Michigan over other dental schools?
That is a great question. Allison, did you ask that? So being being a Florida resident, I think hindsight's always 2020. I didn't apply to any Florida schools because I was stupid and I underestimated how great in-state tuition was. But I applied to Michigan for a few reasons. One, clinical and educational reputation. The school has a good reputation. Two, that early clinical exposure. When I was a D2, we first started seeing patients. Large school atmosphere. You all are at a super awesome school, Ohio State. My undergrad was a small liberal arts school, so we didn't have anything like football games. I mean, we had a football team, but they kind of were trash. But I wanted that large school atmosphere. I wanted the infrastructure of a robust university. I wanted early clinical exposure. And I think above all, I wanted the ability to specialize if I wanted to. So with Michigan, I think that they do a pretty good job of providing you a lot of different opportunities. If you're interested in research, you can do research. If you are interested in straight clinical dentistry, you can focus on clinical dentistry. If you want to specialize, then they have the resources for you to go into the different specialty clinics. I'm going to do that. Something I really liked is that they gave us the autonomy to pretty much control our patient schedule. For example, me as a dental student, I really enjoyed doing operative dentistry, which are things like crowns and fillings. And I also like surgery, so extractions. Since they gave us majority control over our schedule, I could schedule as much of that in my schedule as I wanted to. Whereas if I didn't like doing dentures. So for me, I would give dentures to classmates, right, who may have liked them or wanted to do them. Not every dental school is like that. Some of them will set your schedule, and you'll see the patients that they give you. I was also able to block off my dental schedule. So for example, if when I was a fourth year, if I didn't want to see a patient Friday afternoons, I just didn't schedule patients then, and I just had an early start to the weekend. So the autonomy is something I really liked, but also the opportunities to specialize if I wanted to. Does that answer your question, Allison?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. I actually have two questions. So, like, obviously, dental school is hard. So, like, what made you persevere through it? Like, what really like pushed you to finish and like not give up? And then, second, was there like a really difficult undergrad class that you really had to like also like really push through? Like a requirement for dental school, actually.
Those are two really, really good questions. I'm sorry, what's your name?
Yeah, I don't know why my name doesn't show up. It's Hannah. I don't know. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
It's okay. Thank you for the awesome question, Hannah. So first thing that helped me persevere through dental school. So for me, one of my highly motivating factors is my family and my future family, and being able to provide for them with a profession that gives me a good economic foundation, right? A good earning and a good income. So for me, having that in the back of my mind, that I'm not just learning how to do a crown for just for the fun of it, but one, yes, to help patients, but then two, also because dentists are compensated well, and I want to be able to provide for my future family. I want them to be able to go to the schools that will provide them the best educational opportunities. I want them to be able to enjoy life and have every opportunity that I never had. So for me, when it's a late night, 11 o'clock at night, and I'm getting sleepy and tired, that kind of vision and thought is kind of what kept me going. And for this may sound really strange, but the class in undergrad that gave me the most frustration, which was actually a prerequisite for Michigan, was sociology of all classes. I could do biochemistry. I loved organic chemistry. I did well in my biology classes. Sociology was the most difficult and frustrating class I ever took in undergrad. I had to withdraw from it and take it again the next semester. And it was just very theoretical for me. I'll go on a quick side tangent, but it was one of the we had an essay question in the class, and the professor, and the question was like, which of these theorists was the most correct? And I was like, the theorist the most correct. So I picked one of them and gave some, lackluster explanation. And then when we went over the exam in class, the professor said, actually, none of them were correct because they're just theories. I was like, what does that even mean? So yeah, that class, I ended up withdrawing from it because I was going to get a C in it and I didn't want to C on my transcript. So I took a W, which is a withdrawal, instead of a C. So sociology.
I have a follow-up. Do they ask you about W's on your transcript? Because I know for me, I transferred from a different school and I was in genetics, and then I didn't need genetics when I came to Ohio State. So I withdrew from genetics and picked up a history class that I would need at Ohio State. So now I'm thinking like, oh, are they going to ask me why I withdrew? Because I feel like that's not a very good reason.
So no one asked me about the W specifically in my interview, but I know that for both UCLA and Harvard, both of them on my secondary application, they said, is there anything on your application you want to explain or expand upon? And so both of those, I talked about how in sociology, I had adopted too many extracurricular activities or spread myself too thin and I wasn't able to focus on the class. But next semester, I managed my time more efficiently and I did well in the class. When in reality, I just took an easier professor, but I dressed it up and made it look nice.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Obviously, dentistry and all science fields and STEM jobs are intersectional, and everyone faces different challenges within them. So I'm curious what one of your biggest challenges was on your journey and how you overcame it or are continuing to overcome it.
Yeah. So that's probably one of the best questions I've gotten. Thank you, Lucy, for asking it. Dentistry it's so hard. Dental school is hard, but the most challenging part of dental school for me was passing our board exams. To become a licensed dentist, there are 8 or 9 different board exams you have to take, both written boards and kind of procedural based boards, kind of hand skills where you're drilling on stuff. For me and my personality, I can do really well with written exams, right? I can study all day and take written exams, right? But because I've been doing that my whole life, I've been doing it all the way from elementary school, through college. But hand skills for me was a challenge, and that's scary considering you're starting a profession where everything you have to do with your hands, right? So, going through dental school, I was, doing well, doing fair in my hand skill classes. But when it came to boards, having to, follow their strict criteria for all their root canals and crowns and fillings, a lot of that was really difficult for me. And it was on my last board exam to get my dental license that I failed it because one of my patients didn't show up on time for the exam. And then at the last minute, I had to scramble and try to find a new patient. And then when I found a new patient at like the last minute, I didn't have enough time to kind of clean out the cavity and do everything I wanted to do. Because normally per kind of filling with a live patient, you'll have like 4 hours usually to do the filling from start to finish. For this patient, I had like 30 minutes. And so there's no way I could have done that in a high stakes examination. And so having to, fail that exam because one of my patients didn't show up, which is out of my control, and then having to retake the exam and pay another $1,500 to take it, that was by far the most saddening time of probably my dental school career. But from that, I always look at things on how I could have improved from my perspective. It's really easy for me to sit here and say my patient should have showed up on time. I called them 2 days before and they knew how important this was for me. It's easy for me to say that. But on the other side of the spectrum, you know what I could have done? I could have had a backup patient ready in case they didn't show up, right? And finding patients that are willing to show up for board exams, it's difficult. You have to pay them to be there and you have to find one. So yeah, I could have done that and I should have done that, but hindsight's always 2020. And whatever situation you all have, one thing I highly recommend you do is you can't control everyone, you can't control other people, you can't control outside circumstances, but you can always change, how you're doing things. You can take ownership over it. So if I'm failing a class or I'm not doing well in it, it's easy for me to say my professor's crazy, but also I gotta look introspectively that, in that sociology class, I probably could have studied harder for it. I didn't enjoy studying it. I could have studied harder and did well. For that patient boards, I could have had a backup patient and, promised the backup patient a couple $100s to show up, which most people do. But yeah, that was by far the most difficult aspect of my dental school career, especially since it was my last exam I needed. But I eventually retook it and I got my license. So there's that.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name's Brianna. I actually don't go to OSU. I go to George Washington in DC. I kind of reached out to one of the members and I'm trying to start a pre-dental society at my school. So that's why I'm here, if anyone doesn't recognize me. But I just wanted to ask you what your major was in your undergrad, and then kind of an unrelated question, but in going into your interviews, kind of how did you prepare and what do you think was the most helpful tip for interviews?
Sure. Yeah, those are two really, really awesome questions. Thank you for asking them. So I majored in biology, nothing too crazy, nothing fancy. You don't necessarily have to have a science major to get accepted to dental school, as long as you take the prerequisites. One of my fellow classmates, he didn't even finish undergrad. Like he majored in biology, did his 3 years, took his prerequisites, got accepted, and then just never finished, right? So every school doesn't require you to finish undergrad, but small tangent. So I majored in biology, and then what was the second question? I'm sorry, I forgot.
Going into interviews, what do you think you prepared best? Yeah.
So going into interviews, two things were instrumental for me. One, have any of you heard of the Student Doctor Network? Is that still around? Okay, so for anyone who's unfamiliar, the Student Doctor Network, it was really popular when I was applying to dental school. Basically, it's like an online forum where people just talk about the schools they are applying to, their average stats of like their GPA and their DAT of the schools they got accepted to. The most important part of their website is that there is an interview feedback section where basically people who interviewed at dental schools will write on there the exact questions that the interviewers asked them, right? And I did that. I went on that website and looked at all of the feedback from the schools I was applying to. And some of them were pretty spot on. I'm not sure if people still use the website with the frequency that I used it, 4 or so years ago. But even so, dental schools don't change that much, so they probably still reuse the same questions. That was instrumental for me. Also, practicing in front of a mirror or speaking with someone else about, or talking with friends or family with the questions. I would say, hey, can you read these list of questions? And I'll say my responses to them. You want to try to practice maintaining eye contact with the interviewers. You want to be able to know your answers and say them with confidence without sounding like you're reciting them. Those are two really big tips of advice. And then also, don't feel pressure to start speaking before you've kind of gathered your thoughts together. So if they ask you, what do you think your biggest weakness is? You don't just start off and start blurting things out. You can kind of sit there, take a second, think about how to, gain your composure and then start speaking. But most interviews, it's like a conversation. Once you start, it'll just flow naturally. most interviews, they just want to see that you're a person and can talk with someone. Most of them aren't trying to grill you and why dentistry, why not medicine? I mean, they may ask those, but it's not like a drill sergeant type of thing. It's really just a conversation to see if you're normal and human.
I had a quick question. So other than like leadership opportunities, do you have any other ideas for how to stand out to the dental schools?
Yeah, so besides leadership positions, what you can do is things like community activism, community service. You can take also CE courses around patient education. A lot of those are free from places like Crest or Colgate or on Dental Town, which is like a dental website. You can find your application that, hey, during the COVID shutdown pandemic, I took 40 hours worth of patient education, continuing education courses that were focused around how to teach patients how to brush their teeth properly. That's one thing you can do to stick out. If you're able to be a TA for a class, or if you were an RA, I was an RA in dental school, but if you were an RA in undergrad, that could kind of translate to your ability to engage with people and resolve emergency type situations. Because in dentistry, sometimes, mainly when you're a dentist, but when you're a dentist, you're on call sometimes. So that can show your ability to problem solve and alleviate conflict. Let's see what else. Internships. I know with COVID now, it's kind of hard. Hopefully in the next year or so, it may calm down. But I had 3 internships when I was an undergrad. One of them was through this program called the Summer Health Professions Education Program. So that's SHPEP. I did that program at UCLA when I was an undergrad. It was essentially a 6-week program that was aimed towards dental and medical students to just expose them to the field. And just having an internship like that on my application, it's like, wow, Jordan spent his summer, doing something productive. Research looks really good. You don't have to do research to get accepted to dental school. But I did research at the University of Virginia School of Medicine during a summer. And if you can do summer research, it's a great way to get paid, and while also boosting up your resume. So summer research. But at Ohio State, you probably have a lot of research labs there too. So if you can even get like a paid summer or even in the semester opportunity to do research, that looks good. Doesn't have to be dental related. It could be anything. But research, that looks pretty good too. I had another summer internship for a nonprofit organization called Oral Health America, but sadly they've since lost funding, so they're not even around anymore. But they were pretty big in the dental field before they lost funding. Myself and I think 4 or 5 of the previous interns, they all ended up going to dental school, which is kind of sad, but because they're not around anymore. But yeah, so internships, research, community service, tutoring positions. Did that answer your question, Olivia?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I want to respect your time. It's already a little past 7:30. If you need to get going, we can maybe do one more question or just end it here, whatever you want.
So tomorrow's my non-clinic day, so I don't have to be anywhere. So I am able to stay for pretty much as long as you allow, Lily. So we can do one more question, 2 more questions. And if you have any questions after that, you can feel free to email me or even message me on Instagram. I'm usually a little more active on Instagram than email, so that may be even better. But how about 2 more questions maybe? Okay.
Awesome, that sounds great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Catherine, and I'm looking at your Instagram right now, and I see that you're engaged. Congrats.
Thank you.
Kind of wanted to ask if you have anything to talk about on your experiences of keeping healthy relationships, not with specifically your partner, but also your family and past friends, especially keeping up with the pre-dental process and also just being a dental student.
For sure. Yeah. Great, fantastic question, Catherine. So dental school is hard on relationships. It really is. For us, we were long distance all throughout dental school and a little bit of undergrad. So just as a little background for everyone, myself and my fiance, we met well, she was my girlfriend then, but we met freshman year of undergrad. We lived like 20 minutes apart from each other. So we were never, at the same place at the same time most of the time. Fast forward to dental school, we were doing long distance. She lived 2 states away. I lived in Michigan. She lived in Indiana. And for me, my personality, I know I can get really tunnel vision really quickly. And I found out that that's really not healthy for a good relationship because I can get laser focused and I won't text or call or anything. And, she let me know that I need to know if you're still alive and breathing. So I'm not over here, freaking out that you're not dead in a ditch somewhere. So, one of the best things I learned how to do was to be a better communicator. And you don't have to sit here and I'm not going to sit here and tell you have to constantly communicate with your significant other, every 5 minutes, but good morning, text, just let them know, hey, going to be a busy day in lab and studying. I'm doing well. Just let you know that it'll be a busy day for me. Just simple things like that can go a long way, just to show that you care about your significant other. During finals periods, I learned that I just had to let her know that I would be busy during that time, but that I'm doing okay. And then also scheduling just dates and times to decompress. If you have a significant other that's not in dental school or if they have a career already, your schedules will be like this, because when you're in dental school, you're working from sun up to a lot of times sundown. You go to class all day, then you have to study throughout the night. Well, if you have a significant other that's in a career already, they go to work and they go home and they're chilling, right? So if you kind of think about if your roles are reversed, if you're the significant other who's working, you may feel like kind of like a little isolated or left out because you're not really doing anything. So communicating and then also setting FaceTime dates. We started doing that like every Friday at 7:30. We would cook dinner like separately, and then we would eat dinner together like on FaceTime. That helped out tremendously. When also it comes to family, for me, all my family was in Florida and I was in Michigan. So I was very far away from them, and that was a bit isolating as well. One of the other biggest mistakes I made was not making enough time for my family. I get tunnel vision and my mom's worried about me, parents are worried about me, and I learned and I incorporated just calling my family and keeping contact with them during kind of my transitional periods. So if I'm walking from the gym home, that was the time I started just calling my mom. It's like a 5-minute conversation, but just that 5-minute conversation goes a long way. So FaceTime dates with your significant other, and then also communicating and calling your parents when you get some off time. Did that answer your question, Catherine?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, maybe one more question, anyone?
Hi, I'm Michelle. Did
Hi.
you have any like really weird interview questions? I've heard like mixed things. Some people have, and then some people it is more of like a standard interview. But did you have anything that like threw you off?
Yes. Yeah, it was my first interview. Oh my gosh. So, like I said, I applied to 8 schools. 6 of them I got accepted to. North Carolina, which is actually one of the top schools I wanted to go to. My first interview, I got denied from there after my interview, and they asked me this question that I'll tell you all. So it was 3 one-on-one interviews. First one went well, it was with a dental student. Second one went well. I was like, man, I'm doing great. This is awesome. Third interview, it's some faculty. He brings me back to his office, and one of the first questions he asks me is, if you were a grape, what would you want your fate to be? And I'm like, what does that mean? What do you mean? What does that mean? And so I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm gonna think about this before I answer. Okay, if I say I want to be broken down into wine, he's gonna think I'm an alcoholic, so can't say that. And so I said something like, I don't know, I would want to be eaten so that I could be nutrition for someone's body or something stupid like that. And that obviously was the wrong answer because he's like, we're just gonna put his application in the deny pile. So so that was the by far the weirdest question I got from North Carolina.
That's
Yeah.
my biggest fear.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why maybe he was assessing my ability to critically think. I guess I can't critically think. I don't know.
Weird. That's a weird one.
It was really weird. Yeah, I don't know. But thank you so much for having me. I want to be aware of all your time as well. If any of you have questions, you can feel free to message me on Instagram. My username is just at Dr. Jordan Brown, or email me. I'm more than happy to respond to any of those.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Personally, I think the most profound thing that you said was right at the beginning when you mentioned that the only thing separating you from us is time. And I think that's just such a good perspective to hold and really puts us on the same playing field instead of this hierarchy. So thank you for that. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
this awesome overview. It leads us
Welcome.
perfectly into future meetings where we're going to be going into the DAT process, the application process, interviews, and all of those things. So this was amazing. Thank you again.
Thank you all for having me. I wish you all the best of luck as you continue through undergrad and dental school.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night, you all.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You're
Bye.
welcome.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.